I have my suspicions that there is a significant subset of audiophiles who have, let's say, a fascination with vintage gear, with vintage audiophile gear. And that's why earlier this year, I covered the Audio Research SP3A here on the channel. And I gotta say, I was knocked out by that preamplifier. It held its own with contemporary electronics in some ways, and it looks fantastic. Anyway, so I'm proud to have done that piece. And then more recently, I did one on the Dynaco Stereo 70. Now this is an all-tube power amplifier. And that one knocked me out so much so that I wound up buying it. So now I am the proud owner of a Dynaco Stereo 70 that is, as far as I can tell, as original as possible. I did not want to update that Stereo 70 to make it sound like a more modern power amplifier. No, I want it to sound as much like it did back in 1959 when it first came out. So today I'm going to do two more. The Dynaco Pas 3. It's an all-tube preamplifier that debuted in 1964. And this one has been fully restored and it looks practically brand new. And also the Krell Pam 1. Now this one arrived in the, as far as I can tell, the mid-1980s. I used to sell them when I was a hi-fi salesman, and I was in love with that preamplifier back in the day. So anyway, I'm happy to spend some time with it now. But before I get too far into the vintage story, I do want to cover some breaking news with the Bose acquisition of McIntosh. I assume most of you have heard about it by now. I just wanted to give my 2 cents, which is really not much, really. But I just wanted to say, yes, I was caught by complete surprise that this even happened. First of all, Bose, I mean, they are not, they're barely an audio company at all. I mean, I would put it to you this way. Back in the days when I used to go to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas every year, Bose did not appear in that show. They were not actually part of the, let's say, the audio community. You know, they were in their own, they were doing their own thing, very successful doing their own thing, but not part of the larger audio world, which I always thought was strange. But they weren't sold through audio dealers, they had their own outlets. Bose to me is always an outsider. So to buy this as mainstream as you could possibly get company, McIntosh, was like, wow, that is so weird. And McIntosh, the company, owns a speaker company, a very successful speaker company, Sonus Faber. So why does Bose need that? But anyway, that's what they did. I don't really know much about it other than that. We will see how this plays out. And yes, I've also heard that Bose has a new version of the 901, their iconic speaker, their first speaker, that's re-entered production now. And it looks kind of weird to me. I can't put my finger on why this new 901 looks so strange, but it does. But anyway, back to the story of today. These two, well, yeah, iconic preamplifiers. I want to talk about the Krell Pam 1 first. As I said, I was a salesman when that product came out. Now, Krell, up to that point, didn't have a preamplifier in their line. They made the Krell KSA 50 and the Krell KSA 100, possibly mono versions of those. But basically, they were a power amplifier company. They desperately needed to make a preamp, and along comes this one, the Pam 1. Now, it's interesting on a number of levels. First of all, before I get to the details of it, I think it is absolutely incredible looking. It looks so much different and better than the Krell preamps that came later, like the Pam 3 and the Pam 5 and the various KRS versions and all that stuff. This is a cleaner look. This looks more like the styling of their power amplifiers than, anyway, I think it's stunning. Absolutely. And now that I get to see it again and live with it for a little while, I am super impressed with the industrial design of this piece. It is a dual mono design down to the power supplies. It has a separate power supply and power cord for the left and right channel. That's pretty cool. And I listened to it, of course, and it is, not modern sounding. It actually has a rather sweet and forgiving sound. Oh, and this piece was fully restored by my pal Ben over at Novolux Stereophonic. He will be selling this piece when I send it back to him. But anyway, and he made a video, Ben did, that's on his YouTube channel, and he talks about the restoration of this piece, which is really good. He makes great videos. I highly recommend his channel. It only has 3 inputs. 2 of them are phono inputs, one for moving coil, one for moving magnet, and the third one is called tuner. Well, it could have been called aux, but it's called tuner. That's pretty limiting, but that's what they did. Now, of course, this one is designed by Dan D'Agostino of Krell. And Dan is a very proud man, very fierce personality. He knows what he wants and he goes about getting it. And that's so true of this preamplifier. And the sound of it is, I would say, not very solid state at all. It's kind of relaxed and sweet sounding, very full sounding, very powerful sounding. Now, one thing about using a dual mono preamp is that you have a separate volume control for the left channel and a separate volume control for the right channel. So you have to constantly be, every time you change the volume, you have to reset them, eyeball them back and forth. It's kind of a pain in the ass. So to do anything, you had to get up from your chair and change the input or change volume settings left and right. But I didn't care. I was having a really good time living with this preamp for a few days. So the one thing that bugged me about the PAM1, which may be fixable, is it has too much gain. For the phono inputs or the line level input, way too much gain. I mean, most of the time I had the volume controls near the bottom of their travel. Let's say 9, when I was listening loud, it was at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, almost never at 12 o'clock. It's not the biggest thing. And there may be a workaround solution because there are mysterious switches inside that I don't know that Ben, who did the restoration, if he fully explored those. So that may be fixable. But as it stands right now, I found the gain a bit too high. You could live with it, but just, anyway, it's not that big a deal. Oh man, the knob feel on this preamp is off the charts. Those machine metal knobs are freaking gorgeous, and they're solid chunks of aluminum. Everything about the preamp in terms of the look and feel of it is just beyond, like the highest levels of audiophile build quality. But the knob feel, whew, I'd just buy the knob if I could. Anyway, now the input selectors, they're pretty stiff. You got to put some elbow grease into turning these little guys. But other than that, it was definitely a very satisfying experience getting back in touch with the original, the PAM1. Now, the next preamp, the Dynaco Pas 3. Wow. Now, this is a full restoration inside and out, first class, very, very impressive. It was not done by Ben. I'm not exactly sure who the person was that did all the work. But anyway, whoever they are, they did first-rate work. Really, really impressive. The tubes are all 12 AX7 tubes. You look around back, and you see all those inputs. Separate input for AM and FM, which is kind of interesting. The phono input is only moving magnet. There's tape. It's really fully outfitted, and of course the AC power receptacles. In those days, for some reason, preamplifiers, you could plug in your power amplifier to your preamplifier. It was a thing in those days, although no one actually did it. No one I knew ever actually used them that way, but they were there for some reason. And eventually, power receptacles on preamplifiers went away. I don't think they're ever going to come back. The front panel looks nice, very clean design, but it has some controls there that you don't see on too many other preamps. Starting with separate bass and treble controls for the left and right channels. Yeah, that's pretty cool. The knob there that selects mono or stereo, well, that's not uncommon, but what you don't see on other preamplifiers is not just stereo, but width of stereo. In other words, you can go from mono to narrow stereo, wider, or the widest possible stereo, which would be normal stereo. And at first I was confused why that's there, and then I realized you know, in the early days of stereo, especially in pop music, you know, the singers would be on the right channel and the band would be on the left channel. So you had these really, with nothing going on in the middle of the stereo image. So with the Pas 3, yes, you could narrow that distance between the band and the singer, which is kind of a cool thing to have. So it does make sense. There's a loudness control, which was very common in those days to boost the lows and highs. You know, these are kind of crude. Later versions of loudness and bass and treble controls are a little more refined in their execution. This is a bit cruder, very touchy. You know, you just touch the treble control and it goes from being kind of dull to being excruciatingly bright. And that was one of the refinements of the next generation Pas 3 preamp. It was called the Pas 3X. And I think the main difference to the X was better bass and treble controls, because people actually weren't afraid to use them in those days. So I wanted to get down to business, to actually listening to the Dynaco Pas 3. And I hooked it up first to the Pas Labs XA25 solid state amplifier. It's my reference amplifier. I hooked it all up, used the Pure Audio Project Duet 15 speakers, and the sound was not so good. Just really small, bland, no dynamics, no top, it's just not happening. And I thought, wow, this is so sad because it looks so good. How could it sound this lame? So anyway, I set about it. I put on my thinking cap, as I used to say, and figured out my problem, which was that this setup was all wrong because I was using a long set of interconnect cables, and older preamps like this do not drive long cables well. It has a very high, the Pas 3 has a very high output impedance. It's over 1,000 ohms, not good, and driving long cables not a happening thing. So, okay, start over. We're going to use a short set of cables, 1 meter cables, and instead of using the Pas amplifier, I use the Dynaco Stereo 70, its natural partner, the Pas 3's natural partner. Yeah, they were made in the same time period. Wow, what a difference. I did listen to the phono input. Phono input was surprisingly quiet in terms of background hiss and noise. It was a little, let's say, strained sounding, a little edge to it that I wasn't particularly happy with. The top end was tizzy. It was okay. Not terrible. But then when I listened to the line input, oh, and the cartridge I was using was an Audiophiliac Condensablu low output moving coil cartridge, but with a step-up transformer. That combination was not terrible, but not exactly, let's say, audiophile. So then I just said, I'll just listen to digital, streaming digital, and play CDs. I used the linear tube audio Arrow DAC and went straight in to the Pas 3. Way better. That combination was definitely more happening. But it still sounded not as clean and as clear as I would have hoped, even acknowledging that this is a vintage piece. Now, it may be the tubes themselves that are in the Pas 3 that are not so hot. I can't speak to that. I wasn't going to be doing tube rolling to get through this because, to tell you the truth, I really get the feeling that people that buy vintage stuff buy it more for its looks than its sound quality, because it definitely looks really cool. And I'm sure if you fiddled with it and did some tweaks on it, you could make the Pas 3 sound better than I heard it. I'm just reporting what I heard. And like I said, the restoration looks really clean, so it's not a fault with the restoration. It's most likely the tubes. But I'm not here to do tube rolling. I'm here to tell you the story. And the story is, I'm glad that it's out there. I'm glad that there's so many people who love vintage audio. And like I said, I did buy my first vintage audio piece in a really long time, this Dynaco Stereo 70, and I am thrilled with it, absolutely thrilled with it. So there we go. And now we can move on to, yes, the Audiophiliac viewer system of the day. Hey, this is San's system. He sent this in from Dubai. His baby there is the Luxman CL38UC, that's the preamplifier. power amplifier is the Gold Note PA 1175 Mark II. Turntable is a Thorens. The speakers are ELAC F7 408s, but they're going to be replaced soon with Gold Note speakers. Thank you, San. All right, we are back. My name is Steve Guttenberg. This is absolutely the Audiophiliac Show. And I'm really glad you're here. I'm really glad that you watched this far into the video. Thank you for that. If you would like to support the channel, the best possible way of doing it is, yes, by joining my Patreon. To do so, super easy to do. The address is on the screen right now. You could join for a couple of bucks a month, up to $50 or even $100 a month. And if you do at those top two tiers, you and I will have a one-on-one conversation every month at the beginning of the month. And I say it many times, I'm going to say it one more time. I love having this conversation with my viewers. It's fantastic. It's feedback. It's the people out there watching me. It's great. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, I can now say my work here is at last complete. Yes, thank you so much for watching, and I really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.